When Lucas met Veronica, he wasn't looking for a whirlwind romance or a dramatic love story. At 39, Lucas had spent more than a decade building a stable career as a financial consultant in Charlotte. His life was not flashy. There were no luxury cars or high-profile parties, no headlines or champagne-fueled nights. But what he did have was something far more valuable: a rock-solid reputation, excellent credit, and a strong sense of loyalty. Veronica entered his life like a spark of ambition wrapped in charm. At that time, she was working as a paralegal, overworked and underpaid, with big dreams that seemed far out of reach. She wanted more than just a desk job and endless hours behind legal paperwork. She dreamed of standing in a courtroom, building a reputation, and someday opening her own firm. But dreams cost money, and Veronica had none. Her credit was a mess from student loans and credit cards. Her savings barely covered rent. Law school felt more like a fantasy than a goal. Lucas saw potential in her that she couldn't yet see in herself. He admired her drive and the fire in her eyes when she talked about the future. When she confessed that tuition and expenses were too high, Lucas offered to help. He signed as a co-borrower on her first student loan, telling himself it was temporary. Once she became a lawyer, she would refinance and relieve him of any responsibility. That was the plan, and Lucas believed in it because he believed in her. As the years passed, that one signature became many. There was the second loan for her bar exam prep, a third for a specialized legal degree, a line of credit to help her buy a professional wardrobe, and later, another to launch her own practice. Lucas guaranteed the lease for her office space, signed off on high-end equipment purchases, and even backed her liability insurance. Every time Veronica said, "I just need this one last thing," Lucas agreed. He never saw it as a sacrifice. He saw it as an investment, not just in her future, but in their shared future as a couple. While Veronica studied, Lucas managed their finances. While she networked, he balanced budgets and paid bills. While she climbed the ladder, he built the scaffolding beneath her feet. Together, they seemed like a team, or at least that's what Lucas believed. 8 years of marriage passed. Veronica transformed from an uncertain paralegal into a confident attorney with a growing reputation. She wore tailored suits, attended high-profile conferences, and spoke with the polished authority of someone who had made it. Friends and colleagues congratulated her on her success. She smiled and accepted the praise, rarely mentioning the man who had underwritten every step of her journey. Slowly, Lucas began to notice subtle changes. She stopped introducing him as "my husband, Lucas," and instead said, "This is Lucas," as if his name alone was enough explanation. She spent more nights at the office, more weekends at events where spouses were not welcome. Conversations at home became shorter. Plans for vacations, children, or a shared future faded into silence. It wasn't a dramatic breakup. It was a slow erosion, the steady wearing away of intimacy and gratitude. And then came the night everything changed. Veronica had invited dozens of guests to celebrate the opening of her new law firm. The office was sleek and modern, filled with polished wood, expensive furniture, and the soft hum of success. Colleagues, partners, and clients gathered with glasses of champagne, congratulating her on what appeared to be a solo achievement. Lucas stood quietly near the back, proud and supportive, unaware that the evening would soon redefine everything he thought he knew about his marriage. When Veronica stepped up to speak, her words were sharp and deliberate. She thanked everyone for believing in her, acknowledged her mentors, and spoke of the hard work that brought her here. Then, with a theatrical smile, She gestured toward Lucas. "And here's my starter husband," she announced. "Time for the real thing." Laughter rippled through the room. Before he could react, she handed him an envelope, divorce papers, and told him it was time for her to upgrade. The humiliation was public and deliberate. The man who had funded her dreams, co-signed her loans, and built the financial foundation of her career was reduced to a punchline. Lucas stood frozen, holding the envelope as people whispered and chuckled around him. 8 years of shared life, reduced to entertainment at a cocktail party. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He didn't make a scene. He simply slipped the envelope into his jacket pocket and walked out the door. As he stepped into the cool night air, one thought began to crystallize in his mind. Veronica believed she had outgrown him, that she could discard him without consequence. But she had made one critical mistake. She had built her empire on his foundation. And when the foundation is removed, the structure above it does not stand for long. This was not the end of Lucas's story. It was only the beginning. In the days ahead, Veronica would learn that success built on someone else's support is fragile. And Lucas would discover that even the quietest man can change the course of a story when he stops carrying the weight for someone who no longer values him. The night of the law firm's grand opening was supposed to be a celebration. For Lucas, it was more than that. It was the culmination of 8 years of shared sacrifice, a testament to the long nights, the financial risks, and the unwavering belief he had poured into Veronica's dreams. He had stood beside her through every challenge, quietly making sure the bills were paid, the loans were approved, and the opportunities kept coming. This evening, he imagined, would be a moment to stand proudly as her partner, the man who had helped make all of it possible. Instead, it became the night everything shattered. The event was staged to impress. The office was sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, catered hors d'oeuvres circulating on silver trays, and champagne flutes clinking beneath warm lights. Veronica glided through the room in a designer suit, her smile polished, her tone confident. She spoke to senior partners like she had known them for years and laughed effortlessly with junior associates eager to be in her orbit. Lucas stayed close but unobtrusive, sipping champagne and watching the woman he had once believed was his teammate. When the speeches began, Veronica took center stage. The applause quieted as she addressed the crowd, thanking mentors, celebrating colleagues, and acknowledging the long road that had brought her here. Lucas waited for his moment, a simple nod of gratitude, a private smile, perhaps a mention of the partnership that had made this possible. Instead, her tone shifted. "And now," Veronica said, pausing for dramatic effect, "I'd like to acknowledge someone else. This," she gestured toward Lucas, "is my starter husband." For a heartbeat, the room was silent. Then laughter, sharp, surprised, a little too loud, rippled through the crowd. Lucas stood frozen, unsure he had heard her correctly. Veronica continued, her words slicing through the air with the precision of a practiced attorney. "He's been such a good sport, supporting my career, signing loan documents, guaranteeing credit lines, making sure I could focus on what truly matters. But now that I'm established," she pulled an envelope from her purse with theatrical flair, "I think it's time for an upgrade." More laughter, a few scattered claps. The envelope, divorce papers, was pressed into Lucas's hands as if it were a party favor. He stared at it, numb, while around him people whispered and exchanged knowing glances. "Brutal but smart," someone muttered. "She's got guts," another voice chimed in. 8 years of marriage, of love, sacrifice, and shared life reduced to a punchline. Lucas didn't speak. He didn't throw the papers back or demand an explanation. He folded the envelope neatly, slipped it into his jacket, and walked toward the door. Veronica called after him, telling him not to be dramatic, inviting him to stay and have a drink, but her voice barely registered. He was already gone. The drive home passed in a haze. His mind replayed every moment of their life together. The late nights reviewing loan documents at the kitchen table. The excited conversations about their shared future. The promises she had made about building something together. All of it now lay in ruins, mocked and discarded in a room full of strangers. But beneath the humiliation, something colder and sharper was forming. Lucas was not a man driven by rage or impulsive revenge. His entire career had been built on patience, precision, and understanding how systems worked, especially financial systems. As the city lights blurred past his windshield, a new clarity settled in. Veronica had made one fatal miscalculation. She believed the foundation beneath her success was separate from the success itself. She was wrong. When Lucas arrived home, he didn't pour himself a drink or collapse in anger. He sat at his desk, opened his laptop, and pulled up the spreadsheets he had meticulously kept for years. Every loan, every line of credit, every insurance policy, every business lease. All of it was tied to him, his name, his income, his reputation. Without that foundation, Veronica's empire was nothing more than a house of cards. By midnight, he had called his attorney. Not a divorce lawyer yet, but the business lawyer who understood the financial landscape better than anyone. "I want you to review every document I've signed for Veronica," Lucas said. "Every guarantee, every co-signer agreement, every personal backing arrangement. I need to know my options." He called his accountant next, then his banker. By the time dawn began to break, Lucas had a clearer picture of the situation than Veronica ever had. Most of the contracts included clauses allowing him to withdraw his guarantee with 30 days' notice. Some could be canceled immediately if the borrower's circumstances changed significantly, and a divorce, he knew, qualified as a significant change. The plan was simple and devastating. One by one, he would begin dismantling the structure Veronica had built on his back. Withdrawal notices, termination letters, cancellation forms, each drafted carefully, each legally airtight. He wasn't acting out of spite. This was business, the very business Veronica had reduced their marriage to when she humiliated him in front of her peers. By the time the sun rose, 17 letters were ready for certified delivery. Veronica might have believed she had upgraded, but she was about to learn the difference between a dramatic gesture and a decisive action. Lucas stood by his window, watching the early morning traffic hum beneath the skyline. Last night, he had been the joke, the starter husband whose usefulness had expired. But today, he was something far more powerful, the man holding the keys to the empire she thought she owned. In that moment, Lucas felt no anger, no bitterness, only resolve. Veronica had chosen to play a game she didn't understand, underestimating the one person who had the power to end it. And soon enough, she would learn a lesson that every attorney, every entrepreneur, and every ambitious dreamer must eventually face. A structure built on borrowed strength cannot stand forever. And when the foundation walks away, the walls will come tumbling down. In the quiet hours before dawn, Lucas's home was filled with the rhythmic tapping of keys and the rustle of paper. Not the sounds of anger, but of calculation. Every loan document, every credit agreement, Every clause and signature that had once been a symbol of trust now sat neatly organized on his desk. Each one represented a lifeline Veronica had relied upon, and now each one was a lever Lucas could pull to bring her entire operation crashing down. It was a strange feeling, cold, controlled, but satisfying. For years he had been the silent partner, the invisible force beneath Veronica's rise. Now that same invisibility was his greatest weapon. She had built her firm on a foundation she did not own. She had mocked the man who created that foundation. And she was about to discover what happens when the ground beneath you is suddenly pulled away. The first move: cracks in the structure. On Monday morning, Lucas mailed the first batch of withdrawal notices, 17 certified letters, each drafted with precise legal language and each carrying the weight of financial reality. They went to banks, insurers, vendors, and service providers, every entity tied to Veronica's practice. The first to respond was the bank that held the business loan. Without Lucas's personal guarantee, they considered Veronica's firm too risky to continue financing at its current level. She would need to provide alternate collateral or pay down the $67,000 balance within 30 days. Otherwise, the loan would be called due immediately. Next came the equipment financing company. Without Lucas's name attached, Veronica was no longer eligible for the generous repayment terms they had offered. She was given two choices: pay the remaining $42,000 in full or surrender the equipment, including the servers, workstations, and case management systems that powered her firm's daily operations. Then came the insurance company. Professional liability coverage, mandatory for any practicing attorney, was canceled, effective immediately. Without it, Veronica could not legally represent clients. It was the equivalent of pulling a pilot's license mid-flight. And finally, the dominoes reached the smallest but most humiliating details. The legal research database revoked her access due to a failed payment authorization. Her firm credit card, once backed by Lucas's pristine credit, was frozen. Vendor accounts were suspended pending new financial evaluations. Even her membership dues for professional associations bounced back, flagged as unpaid. Each notice was a tremor. Combined, they were an earthquake. The fall, from confidence to chaos. The phone calls started on Tuesday afternoon. "Lucas, we need to talk." Veronica's voice was controlled but laced with panic. "I received some concerning letters." "That's unfortunate," Lucas said evenly, his tone as calm as if discussing the weather. "Don't play games. These withdrawals could seriously damage my business." "I'm not playing," he replied. "I'm simply withdrawing my support from someone who publicly announced she no longer wanted me involved in her life. This is different. This is business." "No," Lucas said, his voice firm now. "This was always business. You were the one who pretended it was something else." By Wednesday, the panic had deepened. Veronica's office manager called Lucas's accountant, desperate to renegotiate payment terms. Her associate attorneys began quietly sending out resumes. Rumors spread through the legal community that her practice was in trouble. On Thursday, the blow became impossible to hide. The bank's deadline letter arrived, demanding $67,000 within 30 days. The equipment company followed with a notice of intent to repossess. Clients began calling, concerned about her ability to represent them without active insurance. One even requested a full refund and withdrew their case. By Friday afternoon, Veronica's world had gone from polished confidence to frantic damage control. And then came the moment that stripped away the last illusion of control. The cancellation of her professional liability policy officially notified the State Bar Association. Without insurance, she could no longer legally practice law. The empire she had built over 8 years was collapsing, not from external competition or legal trouble, but from the simple withdrawal of the foundation she had taken for granted. The confrontation, a new balance of power. When Veronica finally appeared in Lucas's office, she was unrecognizable. The confident attorney in tailored suits was gone. In her place stood a woman in jeans and a wrinkled blouse, eyes red from sleepless nights, voice trembling beneath the weight of desperation. "Lucas, please." "We need to talk," she said, as she stepped into the same office where she had once asked him to sign her first loan documents. "I'm listening," Lucas replied, leaning back in his chair. "My insurance is gone. The bank wants $67,000 by next week. The equipment company is threatening to take everything. You can't do this to me." "I'm not doing anything to you," Lucas said calmly. "I'm simply removing myself from a situation you told the world I wasn't part of." "Don't be cruel," she pleaded. "I made a mistake. I handled that night poorly, but you're destroying my entire career." "No," he said. "You destroyed it the moment you forgot what built it." Veronica broke down, tears streaming as she confessed that she had believed she was ready to stand on her own. She had thought her degree, her talent, and her reputation were enough. But now, stripped of the credit, the backing, and the support she had mocked, she saw how wrong she'd been. "I can't pay everything off," she whispered. "I don't have that kind of money." "Then you're not independent," Lucas said simply. The lesson, the power of the foundation. By the end of the week, Veronica's practice was no longer functional. The lights were still on, the sign was still on the door, but beneath the surface, everything had ground to a halt. Without insurance, she couldn't appear in court. Without financing, she couldn't pay vendors. Without credit, she couldn't access essential tools or services. Even her professional reputation, once a point of pride, was unraveling as word spread of her financial instability. The woman who had mocked Lucas as a starter husband was now begging him for a lifeline. And Lucas? He felt no joy in her downfall, no gloating satisfaction. What he felt was something far deeper, a quiet affirmation that his worth had never been defined by the cruel words of a single night. For years he had believed that his support was secondary, that the spotlight belonged to her. But now, with the spotlight gone and the foundation exposed, the truth was impossible to ignore. Without him, there had been no law school. Without him, there had been no office. Without him, there had been no firm. The empire Veronica had claimed as her own was in reality built on Lucas's back. And when he stepped away, the illusion of independence crumbled. In business and in love, foundations matter. They are unseen, uncelebrated, and often taken for granted until they are gone. Veronica had learned that lesson too late. Lucas, meanwhile, had found something far more valuable than revenge. He had found clarity, and in that clarity, he understood that the power had always been his, not in the role of a starter husband, but as the architect of everything she once believed she built alone. By the time Veronica walked into Lucas's office for the second time, the confident attorney who had once commanded a room was gone. The woman standing before him was pale, exhausted, and visibly broken. The arrogance that had fueled her cruel words was replaced by desperation. Her career, her reputation, and her carefully constructed image were unraveling, all because she had underestimated the man she thought she had outgrown. "Lucas," she said softly, closing the office door behind her. "Please, we need to talk." Lucas didn't rise from his chair. He didn't offer her a seat. He simply looked up from the documents on his desk, his expression unreadable. "I'm listening." "My firm is collapsing," she admitted. "I can't pay the bank. The equipment company wants everything back. My malpractice insurance is gone, and without it, I can't represent clients. Please, you have to help me." It was the first time in years that Veronica had used the word please with him. But Lucas wasn't interested in apologies that came only when the consequences arrived. He leaned back in his chair, studying her like a stranger. "Do you remember what you told me when you first asked me to co-sign your law school loans?" he asked. "You said, 'I just need someone to believe in me until I can believe in myself.'" Veronica nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "I remember." "And I did," Lucas continued. "I believed in you. I signed for your tuition. I backed your business credit. I guaranteed your equipment, your insurance, your office lease. Over $200,000 of my financial life went into building your dream." "I know," she whispered. "I'm grateful." "Are you?" he asked, his tone colder now. "Because on the night you opened your firm, you called me a starter husband. You told a room full of people that I was just a placeholder, a stepping stone you could discard when something better came along." Veronica wiped her eyes. "I didn't mean it like that." "Yes," Lucas said calmly. "You did. You meant every word. And now you're discovering what happens when you build something on a foundation you don't own." He opened a folder on his desk and slid it across to her. Inside were copies of every loan, every guarantee, every financial document tying her practice to his credit. She stared at the pages in silence, the weight of her dependence written in black and white. "I'm going to make this simple," Lucas said. "If you want to save your firm, there's only one option. Tell the truth. Go back to your colleagues, your partners, your clients, and admit that your success was built on credit you couldn't qualify for on your own. Tell them that your so-called independence was financed by the man you tried to humiliate." Veronica's face went pale. "I can't do that. It would destroy my reputation." Lucas's eyes hardened. "Your reputation is already gone. Your firm is failing. Your colleagues are about to find out that you can't manage your own finances. The only question now is whether you learn anything from this." She sat there silently for a long moment, the reality sinking in. Then, in a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper, she asked, "What if I can't do it?" "Then," Lucas said evenly, "you can pay me back. All of it. Every dollar. 223,000. "I don't have that kind of money," she said, panic in her voice. "Then you're not independent," he replied. "You never were." Pressure from the outside. Word of Veronica's financial crisis spread quickly through the legal community. By the end of the week, Lucas received a call from Patricia Wright, the same woman who had laughed the loudest when Veronica humiliated him. "Lucas," Patricia began, "we need to talk about the situation." "What situation would that be?" he asked. "Veronica's firm is on the brink of collapse. This affects more than just her. We were planning to refer clients to her. If she goes under, it impacts the entire network." Lucas almost smiled at the irony. "Interesting. Did Veronica mention that her firm's foundation was entirely dependent on my financial backing?" Silence on the other end. "I'm guessing she didn't," he continued. "She probably told you she was a self-made success. But the truth is, She spent 8 years using my credit to fund her career while planning to discard me once she thought she no longer needed me. You're being vindictive, Patricia said. No, Lucas replied. I'm being practical. Veronica made it clear that our partnership was over. I'm simply agreeing with her. Patricia sighed. What will it take to resolve this? It's simple, Lucas said. Veronica needs to publicly acknowledge the truth. She needs to tell everyone that the man she called her starter husband was actually her business partner, the one who made her career possible. She'll never agree to that. Then her firm will fail, and everyone who referred clients to her will have to explain why they didn't properly vet her financial stability. A deal she couldn't afford. By Monday morning, the pressure had reached its peak. Veronica's phone calls grew more frequent, her tone more desperate. The malpractice insurance remained canceled, the bank's payment deadline loomed, and the equipment company prepared to repossess everything that wasn't nailed down. Clients withdrew cases. Potential partners backed away. At one point, Veronica showed up at Lucas's office without an appointment, her voice cracking as she pleaded with him to reconsider. I made a mistake, she said. I was arrogant. I forgot how much you did for me, but please, don't let everything I've worked for disappear. Lucas turned from the window, his face calm but resolute. Do you know what a starter husband really is? He asked. It's someone who supports you until you're ready for something better. Someone whose worth is defined only by what they provide. And you were right. I was your starter husband. I was the foundation you built on. But you forgot one thing. What? When you remove the foundation, everything built on top of it collapses. Veronica's phone buzzed. She glanced down, and her face drained of color. The Bar Association, Lucas said quietly. They're very concerned about attorneys who can't maintain their professional obligations. You called them? I didn't have to. When your insurance was canceled, they were automatically notified. It was over. She knew it, and so did he. Consequences and closure. 3 months later, Lucas read a small note in a legal newsletter. Veronica had closed her practice and accepted a junior associate position at a small firm in a nearby town. Her new salary was less than half of what she used to earn. The woman who had once mocked him as a stepping stone now reported to a partner who had never heard of her starter husband speech. The divorce was finalized without contest. Veronica couldn't afford to fight it. Lucas kept the house, the same house where he had once signed loan papers and dreamed of a shared future. He converted her home office into a library, a quiet space where he could read and reflect on the difference between partnership and exploitation. In the months that followed, Lucas's business grew. His reputation as a man who set firm boundaries attracted new clients who respected him even more. He learned that people value those who understand their worth and who refuse to let that worth be diminished. One afternoon, he received a letter from Veronica. She apologized, explained that she had been blinded by ambition, and said she hoped they could one day be friends. Lucas read the first few lines, then tossed it into the trash. Some bridges, once burned, are not worth rebuilding. Some foundations, once removed, reveal what they were truly holding up. And sometimes, the most powerful lesson you can teach someone is not through anger or revenge, but by letting them live with the consequences of what they chose to destroy. When the dust finally settled and Veronica's empire had crumbled into memory, what remained wasn't just a story about betrayal or revenge. It was a mirror reflecting truths about love, partnership, success, and human nature that many people spend a lifetime learning too late. Lucas's story was never just about a failed marriage or financial retaliation. It was about deeper lessons that resonate far beyond the walls of a courtroom or the balance sheets of a business. 1. Love is not the same as being used. Love, at its best, is a partnership built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. It's about lifting each other up, not using one another as a means to an end. Lucas understood this from the start. He didn't regret signing those loan papers or guaranteeing those credit lines. He didn't regret the late nights spent budgeting for Veronica's dreams or the sacrifices he made to see her succeed. Those were acts of love, freely given. But love ceases to be love when it becomes one-sided, when one person gives endlessly and the other takes without gratitude. The moment Veronica reduced Lucas to a starter husband, she exposed the truth. She had never seen him as a partner, only as a tool. And that's the hard truth many people ignore. Love does not require you to accept exploitation. Lucas's decision to walk away wasn't born of hatred. It was born of self-respect. It was a declaration that love should never mean losing your dignity. 2. Success built on borrowed foundations will always be fragile. Veronica believed her law degree, her talent, and her ambition were enough. She believed that once she reached a certain level, she could discard the people who helped her get there and still stand tall. But success isn't just about what's visible on the surface. It's about the invisible structure beneath it. Every step of Veronica's career was financed, secured, and stabilized by Lucas. He was the foundation beneath her achievements, the silent force behind the scenes. And when that foundation was removed, the empire she had built came crashing down with stunning speed. It's a lesson that echoes far beyond their marriage. Many people believe their achievements are theirs alone, forgetting the support, mentorship, or opportunities others provided along the way. But when you fail to value the foundation, when you take it for granted, it has a way of reminding you just how much you relied on it. True independence isn't about cutting people out. It's about standing tall even when the support is gone. Veronica never reached that point, and that's why her version of success was so easy to dismantle. 3. Respect is the cornerstone of every relationship. Whether in marriage, friendship, or business, no relationship can survive without respect. It is the foundation on which trust, cooperation, and loyalty are built. Once respect is gone, everything else starts to crumble. Veronica's greatest mistake wasn't the divorce. It was the humiliation. By choosing to degrade Lucas publicly, she didn't just end a marriage. She burned the bridge of mutual respect. And once that bridge was gone, there was no path back. In life, people often confuse power with control, believing they can treat others poorly without consequence. But respect is a currency, and once you stop paying it, you lose the partnership it sustains. Lucas didn't destroy Veronica's career. Her own disrespect did that. He simply stopped supporting someone who no longer valued his presence. 4. Smart revenge doesn't require words, only actions. There's a certain kind of justice that doesn't come from shouting matches or courtroom battles. It's the quiet, deliberate justice of letting people face the natural consequences of their choices. Lucas never screamed, never begged, never tried to publicly embarrass Veronica the way she had embarrassed him. He simply acted. He studied the contracts. He invoked the clauses. He withdrew the guarantees. Every move was legal, precise, and irreversible. And in the end, Veronica wasn't destroyed by anger. She was undone by her own arrogance. This is perhaps the most powerful lesson of all. Revenge, when rooted in bitterness, often leaves you worse off. But when it's rooted in self-respect and strategy, it becomes something else entirely. Not vengeance, but closure. Lucas didn't ruin Veronica's life. He simply stopped carrying the weight she assumed she was entitled to. A mirror for us all. Lucas and Veronica's story isn't just about them. It's a reflection of dynamics that play out in countless relationships, partnerships, and workplaces every day. Someone gives, someone takes, someone sacrifices, someone benefits. And too often, the giver is forgotten the moment their usefulness ends. But here's the truth that Veronica learned too late. When you build your world on someone else's strength, you should never treat that strength as disposable. Because if you do, one day you may look around and realize that the very ground beneath you is gone, and the world you built has nothing left to stand on. In the end, Lucas didn't just teach Veronica a lesson. He reminded all of us of something fundamental. Love should never mean losing your self-worth. Success is only real if it can stand on its own. Respect is not optional, it's essential. And the most powerful response to betrayal is not fury, but freedom. Months later, when Lucas walked past the building that once housed Veronica's law firm, he noticed that a yoga studio had taken its place. The sign with her name was gone, the glossy logo replaced by something entirely new. He smiled to himself, not out of spite, but out of clarity. The chapter was over. The lesson had been written. Some stories don't end with reconciliation. Some end with understanding. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give someone who took you for granted is the chance to live without the foundation they never valued, and to see what remains when it's gone.